I'm so glad you decided to spend some time with me today, to spend an hour with me, because I love having time to hang out with service coordinators, number one. And I know service coordinators are busy people. So to take an hour for this out of your day, out of the choices you had today for the conference, I'm really honored. So let me first introduce myself, and then we're pretty much going to dive right in. So I'm Dana Childress. I'm in Virginia. I have worked in early intervention for a lot of years in multiple roles. For about 15, 16 years, I worked as a service coordinator, but I was often in a blended role. So I was most of the time worked as the educator or developmental specialist and service coordinator. I always think like I did a little time as the administrator. That was not my favorite part, but because I loved working directly with the families, and my son was in early intervention, so for about 6 months I was receiving it for him. So since then, I've been on our state's professional development team, and now I'm an assistant professor at Old Dominion University in Norfolk, Virginia, working in early childhood special education, which includes early intervention. And so all of my research interest is early intervention. Definitely a chunk of it is in service coordination. So I guess I've kind of seen service coordination from multiple lenses. Nicole and I were talking about this. I really value time for service coordinators to get together and for you guys to have training that's and conversation specific to your role, because we know across the field there's often not enough of that. And I'll be honest, some research that I've done says service coordinators often are a role in early intervention that many people feel misunderstood, like others don't really get their role, they're devalued. Nicole's telling me about the cool stuff you guys have going on in New Jersey around service coordination, support, and training. So I love that. Um, but not all states have that. And we certainly still have folks working with colleagues on their EI teams that don't understand the role. So I really want as a field to try to help us elevate service coordinators and show respect for the work you do, because it's hard. It's complex work. It's your work. You are experts in the early intervention process, and you know your communities, and you're coaching families. So today, that's what we're going to spend this hour talking about, is what coaching looks like in service coordination. And I'll briefly tell you where this came from. So in Virginia, we had done a lot of work to bring Rush and Sheldon, who kind of put together the early childhood coaching work. They came to Virginia. They trained all over the state, service coordinators, our other providers, our leaders. But once we kind of built all these coaching resources, I think we kind of assumed that service coordinators would pick them up and run with them, and some did. But we heard from a lot of service coordinators that said, like, this doesn't exactly align with my role. Or people that were in a dedicated role, like you guys are, meaning you don't also work as a PT or a speech pathologist or an educator, said, like, our work is different, our role is different, so what does this look like for us? So then in Virginia, we decided to really take a deep dive into the coaching approaches and try to translate what coaching looked like for folks in a service coordination role. So that's what I'm going to share with you today, some of the work we did in Virginia, and a tool we have here. None of this is Virginia specific, though. This is really like looking at coaching, our field coaching across our field through the lens of high quality service coordination. So we're going to talk about, let me get my slide moving. So we're going to relate coaching practices to the work you guys do every day. We'll talk about 9 coaching practices that you can use during common service coordination activities. And these activities are really aligned with your expertise. And if nothing else, I want you guys to go away from the sessions I'm going to facilitate today knowing you absolutely are experts on the team, and your expertise is essential. And in fact, you are the folks that the only providers in early intervention that Congress said, you've got to be on the IFSP. That person's name has to be on the IFSP. I mean, that's pretty amazing. Like, that's how important you guys are. So we're going to take this stuff we're going to talk about. We'll practice some observation of the coaching practices in the context of service coordination using some videos. And I'll share with you the fidelity checklist that we use in Virginia that you can use as a self-assessment if you're interested, and we'll use it with the videos. And then we'll wrap up thinking about, how do we use what we learned today? Like, what do you want to keep thinking about? So to get me started, I'm curious, what do you guys think coaching looks like in service coordination? Well, give me some examples of when you've coached families in your role as a service coordinator. Like, what did you coach them to do? What was the context? And you can drop it in chat. And just so you guys know, I have chat open. I will be watching it closely. Nicole's going to help me, but that's where we can have a conversation today. So let me know, what do you think coaching looks like in your role? What have you coached a family about recently? Yeah, how to advocate for their children. I see a couple of that popping up. That's so important because families come to EI and it's often the first stop on a journey that's going to continue with their kids. So the things that we can help families learn to do now can carry over throughout that child's life. I love it. Preparing them for transition. Yep. Guiding them through transition. I see a couple of those. Providing resources and support, Jessica. That's a great one. Engaging, letting parents know they're the expert, which is an important part of coaching, right? Helping establish routines and blend strategies in their day. Candace, I love that you've said that because sometimes those are things we assign to the other service providers, but service coordinators can be a fantastic resource for families for help them pull it all together across routines and providers. So I love that you said that. How to identify their concerns, Shelley, that's a great point. Prepping them for the transition process, what to expect during sessions, and what their role is, Cynthia. I think that is one of the most important things service coordinators do up front, and then check in with families across time to make sure they're getting what they need, they're able to participate, they understand what good EI should look like. Yeah, helping them find resources, validating what they're doing. Such good things popping up in here. Coach them about supporting the child's behavior, letting them know families that their voices matter. I love that, Gabrielle. So lots of good things. Wendy says, one of my families didn't want to apply for social services because she was too proud, but she needed the help. Mom wound up seeking the help with housing and food stamps. That's an excellent idea or an excellent example, Wendy, of coaching the family to access resources rather than us doing the application for them. And we're going to talk about some of the differences with doing stuff for and with families. Reviewing families' rights, coaching about their priorities. I love it. So great. So you guys see where it falls in, where it shows up. I love that. So let's get all on the same page about some characteristics of coaching because these are going to ground what we talk about. And we can think about which of these strategies you use to do the things you're putting in chat. So what I've done here is kind of combine coaching characteristics across coaching approaches. So we have the Rush and Sheldon early childhood coaching approach. I also pulled from family guided routines-based intervention, which you might have heard called FGRBI. Under the umbrella of FGRBI, we have caregiver coaching. There's a couple of other coaching approaches that are often related to these two main approaches, but they have these characteristics in common. So we often see coaching involves a lot of information sharing. And in fact, as service coordinators, that's part of your expertise, sharing information about resources, about the process, navigating EI. We also see observation. We see caregiver practice being a really important part of coaching as service coordinators and as other providers. Without the practice, parents are passive recipients of information, right? And they're not necessarily practicing what they're using. And it's the practice that helps them find meaning in the coaching and learn the skills they need to get their needs met. So we see reflection, problem solving, and feedback are often things we do in the interaction with parents and with caregivers so that we're helping them reflect on what they know, what they've already tried, maybe helping them solve a problem. Even like Wendy's example of like they need support. So how can they access that through the social service system? And then you guys do this. Often service coordinators are like, I don't know that I do this. You definitely do joint planning and review, whether it's at the end of a phone call, an email, a visit you have with families. That's where you're thinking about what do we do today? What are the next steps? Who's going to do what? What's the parent going to do? What are you going to do to finish this, kind of finish this conversation, tie it up with a bow, and move on to the next step? So as you hear about these characteristics, let's try something. Let's try using the annotation tool. So I'm going to walk you through using a tool, and you're going to mark my slide up and let me know which of these characteristics you think you use regularly as a service coordinator. So if you look at the top of your screen, I think you'll see it'll say like viewing Dana's slides or viewing options. And Nicole can help me if that's not what it looks like, but viewing options, viewing Dana Childress's screen, you will click the downward caret, open up a drop-down menu and click annotate. when you click annotate, a menu will pop up on the left of your screen. You can click this, there's usually like a star or a check mark. I'm going to open it up so I can see it too. Yeah, click the check mark and that will give you a stamp tool. And then you can take your stamp and you can drop it. I'm going to drop some check marks so you see what it looks like. Drop your stamps wherever there are coaching characteristics that you think you use on a regular basis. If the annotation tool is not working for you, you always have the chat. So you can drop the characteristics in the chat. So awesome. I see lots of stuff popping up. Nicole, I have something that just popped up that says a participant is requested to start meeting questions. Should I hit deny on that or was that you?
I don't think it was me. It might have accidentally been me, but I think probably it's just easiest to use the chat for all questions. So,
Okay, I'll hit deny on that one. Okay, I just didn't want to hit something that was wrong. Wow, there's like so much happening on the screen, which is awesome. And I think this is like a representation that you guys do all of this, right? It shows up a lot in your work. So I'm going to pause us. Let me give you like 5 seconds to finish adding. I love it. People are even drawing on the screen. That's fantastic. And we have, what do we have? 210 people in. So it's no wonder there's a whole lot of action here. I love it. Okay, so I'm going to ask everybody to pause. I'm going to clear the screen. So you're going to see all the marks go away. I can get my cursor to cooperate. Clear all drawings. Now I want you to drop on the screen. Which of these do you think, I'd like to pay more attention to? I'd like to think more about doing this on my visits. Maybe it's observation. Maybe it's caregiver practice, or I'd like to learn how to facilitate this a little, like to strengthen my skills. So it's not implying that you never do it, but it's implying this might be a place you'd like to grow. So drop your, you can also use the chat, but I love it. You guys got the hang of the stamp tool for sure. I see a big circle going around. That works too. All right, so things are kind of popping up everywhere. What I don't see is folks aren't clicking information sharing. It looks like, at least it looks like you're there towards the observation side, but it could be there. I see a lot in caregiver practice, and that is very common for service coordinators because that role, like I said, is often we think about that being the role of other providers, but you absolutely facilitate that too. I see reflection, feedback, and problem solving. Okay, awesome. So a couple more seconds to finish. So what I invite you guys today, as we're moving through the practices I'm going to talk about today, look for strategies that might help you hone some of these skills that you want to grow. That's kind of my task for you today. All right, I'm going to clear the screen and you can X out of your annotation tool. So you can look at the bottom of your toolbar. You'll see the red X. Go ahead and X out of that so we don't keep decorating the slides anymore. If we do, it's not the end of the world, but just so you know, you can X out of that. All right, so let's keep going. So let me ask you, when you think about coaching families, what do you think the benefits are of using coaching with families? And you guys talked a little bit about that in the chat, like advocacy, helping families engage. But what are some of the benefits of you using coaching with families as opposed to just telling them, here's a resource, I can call them for you. Yeah, relationship building and empowerment. You're making it child and family centered, Lori. I love that. It's part of the relationship building. They own the decision, Christina. That's really well said. They find their voice, Krista, and that's what we want. I always think service coordinators, we want to work ourselves out of a job. So by the time families are leaving AI, they don't really need us anymore because they know how to access the resources and navigate the system with less and less support from us. So you guys got it. Family empowerment, helping them use their expertise. Helen, that's great too. They remain in control. I love that. That's good because we can give them the information and they can choose what to do with it. So now let's take this one. What are some of the challenges with implementing coaching during service coordination? What's hard about it? Or what can be hard about it? What do you think? What can be hard? Limited touch points. Yeah, we don't maybe get to engage with the parent as much as maybe some of the other service providers. Maybe lower engagement, language barriers. Yeah, a family that's maybe not in the place they're ready to do this. The lack of carryover. Caitlin, higher caseloads, that's a challenge across our field for sure. Busy family schedules, kind of families feeling resistant to change. And Christina, some families would rather let you do things for them. That can be because of systems. They've been a part of systems that have kind of created those ways of interacting. Sometimes families think that's what we're supposed to do. I had a family once that, as she transitioned out of EI, we invited her back to talk at a transition workshop. And she thought she was paying me a compliment in front of everybody, the whole workshop. And she's like, Dana was so great. I swear, I think she did everything for us. She would have vacuumed my house if I had asked her. And as you can imagine, that was a moment where I was like, wow, that was not the compliment to me she had intended, because it meant I overdid for her. So yeah, you guys have hit a lot of those: time constraints, other extenuating circumstances, lack of communication, availability. Working with daycare can be challenging too. So lots of challenges, but there are real challenges to this, and there's some we can control and some we can't. But what we can do is go into our relationships with families with a coaching mindset, and remember that that's what our role is, really to help empower them to do what they can do. In order to meet their needs and be empowered and do the things like you've mentioned here. All right. So let's keep going. We're going to watch. This is a short video just to ground us to help us think about what can coaching look like. So it's an opportunity to hear from a service coordinator in Virginia, and she's going to say some things that overlap with some of the great things you've put in chat. So let's listen to Melissa.
Okay, so I feel like coaching in service coordination is one of those things that you don't necessarily realize is a tool for you at first. I remember when I started as a service coordinator, I couldn't imagine asking a family a question instead of giving them the answer that they wanted from me. So as a service coordinator, you feel like you're there to provide answers for families, but when you realize that actually the most important thing about service coordination is empowering that family to be able to find resources and come up with ideas on their own, just like their provider that comes for therapy does, then you realize, oh, okay, let me think about how I can have mom reflect on that, or let me see what she already knows before I give her that support. And then in the end, you usually end up providing some extra support too, but you'd be amazed what families can come up with that they didn't even realize they knew.
Awesome. I love that last part that she says there, that you'd be amazed what they can come up with. And I think that is a really important part of coaching that we have to remember, is that families have a lot of the answers. And if they don't have the exact answer, helping them think through how to get to the answer is teaching them that thinking process and that way of thinking and accessing resources. That's what's most important. It's great to teach families to access the food pantry or the place, the childcare system. But we also want to help them think about how to do that so that they can use that way of thinking and that way of searching and that way of vetting their choices. They can use that later on, because eventually they will move past needing that childcare or that food pantry, hopefully. And we want them to be able to have the skills they need to do that process in the future. All right, so make sure you have X'd out of your annotation tool if you haven't already. And let's jump into the practices. So we're gonna kind of dive into how do you use coaching practice to help families do these four things. And these four things are aligned really well with what we know about expertise from service coordinators. You are experts in helping families participate in and navigate the process. You're experts in community resources and how your IFSP teams work. So you share a lot of information about that. But we also need a lot of information from families to make that work. So we want them to participate in the process, them to share information, and then we want to help them do what we know how to do, which is access resources and solve problems. So we're going to start at the beginning, right, with the first one. So when we think about helping families participate in the EI process, you basically always have two choices. You can either plan for families or you can plan with them. And the difference is really, really important to understand, especially when we think about the empowerment you guys wrote in the chat. When we plan for families, we're telling them how processes are going to work. We often are telling them what they're expected to do, which is helpful, especially at the beginning when families enter the early intervention system, and many have never been in a system like this. So if we think about the assessment process and we are going to plan for families, we might say, this is what's going to happen. This is who is going to be there. This is the time of the assessment. This is how long it's going to last. These are the types of questions you're going to be asked. So these are important things to share with families. But when we tell them, when we plan it for them, and we just give them the information, we're putting families in the position of being a passive recipient of information. And that's that's not where we want them to be as often as possible because we are using family-centered practices. And family-centered practices remind us that we want to support active participation and informed decision-making for families. So if we are planning for them, we're just relaying information. We're not necessarily giving them much context or relating the context of this assessment, in my example, to their everyday life, which could limit their ability to actively participate for the process and help them figure out how to be active participants in a process that's designed for them. Like it's designed for us to get information from them. So let's switch to the other option, and we're going to plan with them. So when we do intentional planning with families in the context of a coaching approach, we're looking for opportunities to engage the parent or the caregiver in actively making decisions and actively planning for their participation. So, and we do this throughout the EI process. But let's think about assessment. So if you are going to plan with families versus for, what would planning with families look like on assessment? When you think about that initial evaluation and assessment we do when kids are coming in, we're determining eligibility and preparing for the IFSP. How can you plan with a family for that activity? Like what questions might you ask? How can families have opportunities to make decisions in that process? Give me some examples in chat. How do you plan with them instead of for them for assessment? I love it that you're doing a little thinking about this. What might that look like? Oh, Francois gives us a great place to start. When are you available for the assessment? Yeah, I love that. Prioritizing the child's needs, asking their priorities. Yeah, Christine. Asking about a time and location. Yeah, absolutely. Who they would like to see present. Going in based on what their concerns, what's important to them. Asking what they're seeing that prompted us to call them. So you're tapping into their expertise, their knowledge before we even start the process, right? Actively listening. What would you like to see your child doing? What's not working? So Candace says maybe including and asking them as opposed to telling them. Ask what they notice about their child. What times of the days are most challenging? So you're gathering a lot of good information, and that information is going to help you plan with the family for that assessment. We might be able to ask them too, like, how would you like to participate? Families will often reply with, well, how do parents typically participate? Like, what are my options? I've seen service coordinators provide families with some kind of a handout or a PDF that they can use to plan and prepare. Like they could prepare them. These are some of the questions you're going to be asked, like, what are your priorities? What's your daily routine like? What things go well? What are the challenges? What is your child's favorite thing to do? And they give them something that they can be thinking about ahead of time so that when they go into the assessment, they've had a chance to think about this. I've seen service coordinators offer families the opportunity to even prepare a video or to have video clips if they really want to show the team their child doing something that they might not see during the actual assessment event. So there's all kinds of ways we can think about helping parents make decisions. If you have the opportunity to let families choose the time of day when the assessment is going to happen, that's awesome. I know there are lots of programs in Virginia that do like a 9 a.m. assessment and maybe offer one at noon. And so they give the family the choice of which time works best for them. They might offer families, these are the typical players on an early intervention assessment team. Who would you like to be there? Like, so say we have a child referred for global delays. They could maybe choose. They might say, I really want the PT there and I really want the speech therapist there. Okay, if they can be a part of that and make an informed decision, that's really powerful. Or maybe they need the assessment at a different time of day than we typically plan because they want to make sure the grandmother can come. Wherever we can offer flexibility in decision making, we're setting parents up for their active role that's not only starting then, right, at intake and assessment, but going to continue throughout the process. Great examples in the chat. I love it. So we want to so how we help them participate in this is really up to us. So we can think about some coaching practices, some strategies we can do for this. So we can prepare the family, and you have lots of great questions and ideas in the chat. What's the main language in the family's home? What works well? What anything changed since the first time we spoke and the assessment today? Prepare them for whatever step you are in the process. Adult learners tend to like to know what's coming. Well, what's it going to look like? Why is it important? And what am I supposed to do? So we can prepare them for assessment, transition, IFSP, whatever we're process when. Think about where they can have options and make decisions, help them consider those and give them that active role, and then develop a joint plan with each step in the EI process so that they know what's coming next. So after the assessment, we move into IFSP if the family chooses. When we get to transition, let them know what are the steps in the transition process in your program and how's that going to work. So the parent not only knows what to expect, but they know what they're going to do. Maybe they could be the one to refer themselves to the school as opposed to the service coordinator do it. I used to offer families that option. Many said, "You do it." I'm a little intimidated by this, but I always gave them the option. I can help you. We could do it right now in this visit. You could make that referral, and I'm here if as support. So help them know what's coming next. Yeah, give the opportunity for parents to get involved in support systems of their preference and show them that we're a part of the team. That's a great example, Maribel. So we're preparing them for the process, every step in the process. Now let's think about wherever they are in the process, how can we use coaching to help families share information? So there's so much information we need, and it's really intimidating for families. Research has suggested families can feel intimidated. They don't know why we're asking questions, how we're going to use the information. And it can be like kind of an unknown unless we help families understand kind of the what, why, and how about the information. And I think this is an important place for service coordinators to take the lead in helping families understand what information we're asking for, why we're asking for it, and how it could be shared. So give me some examples in chat. When you think about your last week or two, what are some examples of information you've asked families for? What did you need families to share? Give me some examples in the chat of what that information looked like, sound like. Ooh, Cynthia and Jesse, start us on the hard ones, financials. Our service coordinators do that at the initial visit intake. They ask for financial information, and it's honestly the most service coordinators' least favorite thing to talk about because it's kind of uncomfortable. So you're right, that's a hard one. Income, availability, routines, diagnosis information, concerns, their schedule, availability to meet. Lots of good stuff in here. Let's see if parents live in the same home. Gabrielle, that's a great question. Sometimes that could be a hard one. Just their daily activities, childcare schedules, asked about information related to consent. Yep, all this looks like all the important service coordination stuff that you don't just ask once, right? You have to revisit a lot of this across time. So how do we make families feel safe and make it easier for them to share? So when we think about adult learning, we think about feedback, we think about problem solving. We want to ensure that the caregivers understand what we're asking, why we're asking it, and how the information will be used. We want to give them the opportunity to ask questions and respond and attend to their needs and comfort. If they're uncomfortable sharing who else lives in the home, or you sense that the financial information feels uncomfortable, ask them how they're feeling about sharing this, and make sure they understand what's going to be done with it. I worked with a family one time that when we came to the financial discussion, I was pretty sure I was asking for information that they did not have. I came to learn they did not file taxes. And that was not for me to judge, right? It was just what they did. And so we had to find another way to access the information if they so chose to do that. In the end, they chose to not share any financial information. So as you know, that's kind of sticky, but it was uncomfortable, but we got through it. And part of getting through it was acknowledging the discomfort. Let's see, open-ended questions taps into that reflection and active practice part of coaching. Using open-ended statements to help families access what they know, to give them the opportunity to give us feedback on what we've shared, and to help them it's just easier to share information when it's open-ended versus yes, no. But we have to acknowledge that sometimes families may be uncomfortable or unfamiliar with answering a lot of open-ended questions. So it's okay to give them permission to take their time, to let them know sometimes this can be hard and they don't have to answer everything. I can think of working with a young parent who was living with her grandmother, and her grandmother was kind of the young parent and the child's primary caregivers in the dynamics of this family. But I was having conversations with this young parent and I'm asking her open-ended questions. And she would often look to her grandmother. When we were alone, she wasn't sure how to answer. And what I came to realize is that she didn't have a lot of practice answering these kind of big picture questions for her child because she relied on her grandmother as the kind of the, in that lead, as sort of a leadership role. Over time, it got a little easier for her, but it was hard for me too to think of how to help her share information that not only she's comfortable with, but for me to also allow the time for her to get used to this kind of work together we were doing. And then we also want to be thinking about how can we provide feedback to families that's specific to what they've done and that helps them grow their skills. So I'm never a fan of good job mom for two reasons. Good job what? What did they do? And they're not my mom. So we can talk to families about specifically what they did well, what we saw, how it relates to their goals, and then it's a little soapbox of mine. I think it's a show of respect to call families, call parents by their names, whether they choose to be Dana or they choose to be Miss Childress, like whatever they choose. I learned that in many ways. I worked with a family for months, a grandmother, and I had been calling her by her first name because I'm pretty informal, like call me by my first name. And then I thought about it and I thought I never asked her how she'd like to be referred to. And one day I recognized that and I told her, I'm sorry, I never really asked you how you preferred to be, um, preferred for me to call you. And when I asked her, she preferred Mrs. Smith, her last, she wanted that formality. And I thought, okay, I had not been respecting that in the beginning. So, couple coaching practices to think about there. Our last category of service coordination activities that we can relate to coaching is a big one. How do we help families access resources and solve problems to build their capacity to do that more comfortably without us? Here again, two options. We can either do what we often, I loved this first part on the left, locate the resource, make the contact, provide the family with information. I was a helper monkey, that's what we call it in my family. Like, you're a little helper monkey. I was a helper. Like, a lot of us come to this role, and I was good at it. Like, I knew the resources. I'd made, built rapport with people at the different community resources. I could do it. But what would happen then is the next time the parent needed something, they came to me and expected me to do it. And let me give you another example. A lovely family I worked with, um, that I think I did too much. You know how you learn a lot of things through the mistakes you make? We were at the last visit, transition visit. This parent had not been comfortable really doing a lot of transition activities. And here we are at the last visit. Her daughter had multiple, not significant, but kind of global disabilities, wasn't interested in preschool. At the last visit, she's like, what am I going to do? She's not going to have any therapy. I don't know what I'm going to do. We had been talking about this for like years because I saw her after she was born. But this is when the parent was ready. So I'm like, well, we can try to get her referred to the therapy clinic at the Children's Hospital. And so because they didn't have a long waiting list, and I was like, so she's like, let's do that. So she goes and gets she actually had like a plug-in phone in her wall, not her cell phone. She goes and gets the phone and she hands it to me. So you guys know what that means. She was dependent on me to do the stuff that I thought I'm really great at. But what I realized is like, wow, I didn't help her feel prepared for this. So in that moment, I was like, no, you can do this. You can do it. So we talked about what to ask, what information she would needed. I sat with her and she made the call. And it was such a learning moment for me to go like, I can do this better with other families. So we don't get to the end and they're like, what am I going to do? Because I don't have you anymore. I would much rather them say, thank you for all your help. I don't need you anymore. That's what I wanted to happen. So if we don't want to end up where I am, locate the resource and do it all for the family, let's think about the other side where we're going to do it with them and we're going to build their capacity. So instead, assist the family in determining what they need because sometimes they tell us, but it's not exactly what we think. Then we're going to coach them about how to solve the problem themselves. So let's think about what are some strategies that might work for that. So when we're coaching, if this is something you've already discussed before, start back where you were. So start with the previous joint plan, follow up, check in. What were you able to accomplish with that call to, like, how did that call go when you called the children's hospital? Say that we had already tried that before. Help the caregiver reflect on their prior knowledge and experience. So let's imagine that we're working with a parent who calls you and they're like, our childcare fell through, and we don't have anybody else for Monday when I go back, back to work. So if we're going to ask them to reflect on their prior knowledge and experience, what might we ask them? Rather than me jumping in and saying, here are 3 childcares you can call today. If we're going to help them reflect on their prior knowledge and experience around childcare, what's a question you guys might ask them if we're helping them get connected to a resource before we jump in and do the work and say, here's who you can call? What might you ask if we want to help them reflect on what they already know and what their experience has been? Can you think of a question you might ask, like a good open-ended question to start that conversation? Lori, awesome. How did you find the childcare you currently have? Mary Kate, are there other options you've considered in the past? Who have you contacted when you needed support in the past? Helen, that's a great one because it could be they've leaned on family members or friends when childcare, like a more formal childcare, wasn't working. Are there options you've been curious about? I love that one. Do you have family or friends who've used local schools? These are such good questions. These are that point where you hear about the need and you pause. And before you jump in with what you ask what the family already knows because you're acknowledging it's like showing respect for their knowledge and experience as adults who are capable and have done, maybe done this before. If you ask these questions and they're like, say that we ask Libby's question, are there any daycares nearby? And they're like, I don't know. She was, I had my daughter, my mom was keeping her, and now my mom can't. That's okay. When they don't know, maybe we ask another one of the questions in the list. And if they don't know, then we're going to share some expertise. So then we might share some resources. Before we even get there, though, say we've said we're talking about transportation or we're talking about, is there an option you've been curious about? And they might say, well, yeah, there's, a church preschool down the way that I've kind of heard good things about. Then we might do some collaborative problem solving. Like, so what do you know about the hours they're available? Let's see if we can find their contact information. So we're going to problem solve back and forth with them because we ultimately want to get to the point where the parent reaches the answer and that they're able to make that contact or find that resource or solve that problem. If we get through the first couple of steps and the parent is still not sure what to do, share what you know, share the information, offer to provide that support, but keep in mind that you want to back your support out wherever you can so that parent is actively practicing accessing resources and solving problems. That's where caregiver practice comes in for service coordinators. And then we're going to wrap that up, making sure everybody knows what everybody's going to do. So that joint plan, that might be you calling in a couple days or calling on Monday to see, or hopefully before Monday if it's the childcare issue. Maybe I'll give you a call tomorrow to see if you've found childcare. Or you say so the parent is going to make the call to the center to see if they have availability, and you're going to check in with them by text later, something like that. So everybody knows what everybody's going to do. Catherine, I love the question, the last one I see in chat. What's important to you in a daycare? That's important even before we get to share what you know, so that if I know what they want, I can be the information I share is going to be more relevant and useful versus me kind of spitballing and saying, here's a list of 14 childcares in our city. Call any of these you want. That's kind of limited in its helpfulness for families, right? So the more information we gather, the better support we can provide, and the more likely families are going to get their needs back more quickly. So I think what I'm going to do, I'm looking at the time, since we just kind of did a scenario, I'm going to move us past this and I'm going to introduce you to our tool. So this was one of your handouts that you saw that is the fidelity checklist. That's actually, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to pull it up on the screen so you can see it this way too. So you have access to this as a handout. As you move through this, you're going to see that this is organized by 9 coaching practices. So you see the 3 through 9 on this page, 1 through 2 on the first. Everything I've talked to you about looks like what we've talked about so far looks like more than 9 practices. But the stuff we've talked about is taken these 9 practices and just put them in the buckets of service coordination activities, accessing resources, helping families share information. So I'm going to give you just a moment or two to kind of read through these. You can just to kind of get a little oriented or look through your handout, and then we're going to watch 2 videos to see how these practices show up in service coordination. So I'll kind of briefly walk us through them, and you can read along as you're going. So we've talked about reflecting on the joint plan when we have one from a previous session, responding to caregivers' questions, attending to their needs. That may be where you're asking questions, you're just noticing the situation and figuring out how can you support the parent to move forward in this conversation. Using our open-ended questions, facilitating collaborative problem solving as we're gaining information, we're problem solving, providing feedback. It's kind of a reciprocal conversation. We might share what we know, encourage the caregiver to think about options, make decisions based on this information, prepare them for what comes next, whether it's accessing that resource, preparing for that next step in the I process, etc. Helping make sure they understand what we're doing, what their role is, how that information is being exchanged, whether with you or another resource, and then going back to developing a plan for what happens next. So let's take these steps and let's practice thinking about them in the context of a video. So we're going to watch the first video. I think is just a couple minutes long. We're going to play 2 videos. This one's about 2.5, 3 minutes long. Watch the video and think about the coaching practices. You can use the checklist. You can think about what we've talked about today. And once we're done with the video, I want to hear your impressions of the video, of this, how this service coordinator, her name is Christina, how she's working with this parent. They'll be talking about the parent, the parent is on the right, Christina's on the left, and they'll be talking about a communication device for the parent, for the child's name is Liesel. So first impressions, and then I'm going to ask you which coaching practices did you see Christina use? So that's what you're going to be watching for. So here we go.
Hey, Bidet, how are you?
Hey, good, Christina. How are you?
Good, good. So
Good.
I was talking to your SLP the other day, and she was telling me all about how you've been using the AAC device and how it's not really working, and so we kind of talked about what else we can use instead for Liesel, and we just don't think that it's working for her.
Okay, so
Oh, hang on. I need to get that. I'm trying to schedule a hair appointment.
Okay.
Hello? Yes. Oh, that's perfect. Yep, 3 o'clock? Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. Bye. Sorry, I really needed to get that because I had to schedule. Can you see these roots? I really have to get it done.
That's okay. I just I'm a little concerned. First, I'm not quite sure.
I don't
Who's the
understand why you're so
SLP again?
The SLP, like the person that's coming, the speech therapist. Come on.
Oh, okay. Right.
Yeah.
SP, speech
Yeah.
pathologist. And what do you mean her device isn't working? Because I thought it was doing pretty good. I mean, we just got it, and we were working so hard with her speech therapist on it.
I don't know. I mean, she just said that, Liesel can't do it and it's not working. And so she said we should just give up and then try something else at this point.
Well, so then do we have other options? Because I feel like if we give up, how's my daughter going to communicate with
Yeah,
me?
I mean, she said, we're going to try this high-tech device because everybody's using high-tech devices now. So, we just thought this is going to be the best thing for her because, clearly this isn't working.
Okay, so it sounds like you're talking about a different device, but what do you mean by high-tech device?
So, like iPad, tablet, like that kind of thing,
Okay, I mean, we have phones and we have other devices, but how is she going to be able to communicate on those? What makes it different?
I mean, you don't have to worry about it. The speech therapist has it all figured out. She'll come and she'll show you exactly how to do it. She can just push all the buttons and swipe, and it'll be great. Don't worry about it. It'll be perfect. It's going to be so much better for her than what you have right now.
Okay, and so, I mean, what are we going to do in the meantime? We see our therapist tomorrow. Should we be practicing with this? Is she going to bring a new one for us to use?
Don't worry about anything. I'll just call her myself because, we've already been talking. We already kind of thought that this would be the best thing for her. So I'll just talk to her myself. You don't have to worry. You don't have to do anything. I'll do it. I'll call. And then, she'll bring out whatever she thinks is best.
Okay. All right.
All right, sounds good. I'll see you next time.
Yeah, I'll see you next time.
All right, first impressions. We've got 2 in the chat. Torture and cringy. Please tell me this did not happen. Columbus says, how does she have a job? Horrible. Ooh, cringe. Yeah. So you saw the non-coaching example, right? And so, yeah, you guys are like not good at all. Video of not what to do. So seriously. And I didn't give you a heads up on that because I frankly enjoy the responses when people are like, she should be fired. So yeah, no way this happened. Terrible when the service coordinator says this is what is best. So not acceptable. You guys are right. If Christina was working with any of us, she would likely not have a job so much longer, right? Because this is an example of poor service coordinator. It was a little funny for me to watch your faces because some people were like their eyes got big or they smiled. Yeah, not a great example. We're going to look at the do-over in just a second. But let me know, were there any coaching practices she used? I see Rebecca shaking her head no, like a solid no. Anything you saw? What do you think? Yeah, look how defeated the parent looks. Christina, that's really important to pay attention to that body language for sure. They'd already been talking about the kiddo, not so much. Yeah, Doreen, she was kind of insensitive, and she, that hair appointment was more important than what was going on with the parent for sure. So, are we kind of agreed we didn't really see? I mean, I suppose you could maybe say, excuse me, she was preparing the parent for what would come next, but it was so poorly done. I'm not sure that we would count that, right? When we think about really good coaching. Yeah, Rebecca said even if she did have any coaching, it would be lost since she was so dismissive. Yeah, she was not respectful. So, if you were her supervisor and you were going to give her some feedback, some constructive feedback, what might you say? One time I asked that question and a whole bunch of things popped up and he said, "You're fired." Let's see. Listen to the mom. Ask questions and listen. Listen more, talk less. No personal calls, Rachel. Great point. Cell phone on silent. That's a good point. Idira says she needs more training. Yeah, absolutely. Please use real language, than abbreviations. Julie, great example. Listen to the parents' concerns and discuss other options. It should be, Melanie, a discussion, right? That's absolutely right. Ask open-ended questions. You guys got it. Have empathy and listen. So let's give Christina, not Christina, I pulled that name out of the chat. Oh no, it is Christina. So many Christinas. Christina is our service coordinator here. Let's give her a do-over. So now you are going to watch her. You're going to see what actually is a better reflection of her actual service coordination. So let's look at the do-over. Let's look at the coaching example. First impressions go in chat, and then we're going to talk about which coaching practices you saw her use. So here we go. And I will tell you, Christina is an actual service coordinator, and Liesel's mom is an actual early intervention parent. They were both very gracious in agreeing to do these videos for us. And just quick side note, they came up with the non-coaching example. So it was hilarious. And I'm watching it and I'm like, what are they doing? And they were doing a non-coaching example. So let's see what it looks like if they're actually using the coaching practices we've talked about. Oops, here we go.
Hey, Renee, how are you?
Good, Christina. How are you?
I'm doing well.
Good.
So I know the last time we had met with the speech pathologist, and we had talked about bringing out a communication device, and the plan was that you were going to start to work with it. All right. So how is that going for you?
It's been awesome. I love that my daughter's finally been able to communicate a little bit better with us, but we've also had some issues.
Okay, can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so with Liesel's PRUS that she isn't able to rotate her arms and has like low muscle tone, so it's been really hard for her to push the buttons. And so sometimes she'll push the button and think that I've heard it, but because it doesn't trigger the word, I don't recognize she's requesting something. And so I don't feel like she's getting the what's the word, like the recognition for her efforts in trying to communicate with us.
Yeah, sure. No, I understand. It sounds like it's been a challenge, and what I hear you saying is that you've been using it, but because of the limitations she's having with her hands and her mobility, that she has a little bit of a harder time pushing it.
And she wants to communicate, but she's not getting that opportunity to.
Yeah, and obviously you want to use a device that she's able to communicate with you.
It does its job.
Right, understandable. So can you tell me, are there times when and she is able to use her hands or use her fingers to kind of manipulate other things, that she's able to do well?
Oh, yes. She's able to manipulate my phone just fine. She's always getting into my apps. And I think it's because you don't need a lot of pressure to be able to swipe or click things,
Okay.
like the icons
Right.
or apps on the phone. And so if we had something like a tablet, which I've seen some of the older kids like at the activities or at playgroups using, so I know they're out there, but I don't know how to get access to them.
Okay, so it sounds like you have a little bit of familiarity. Can you tell me a little bit more about why you think that a tablet might be useful specifically for Liesel in this situation?
Yeah, so again, I think that with her low muscle tone, I think it'd be so much easier for her to be able to push the icons. We also saw another kid with one where when she clicked an option, it gave her more options, and she's outgrowing this already. So I think that she needs to be able to have that option to be able to add a bigger vocabulary faster than only having 20 squares will allow.
Right, no, absolutely, and it sounds like you've really thought it through, and you're right that with a tablet there's lots of apps and programs, and it gives you a lot of variety so that she can communicate all of her needs and wants to you. Okay, well, good. So I really appreciate you sharing this information with me. I think it's really helpful, and I think it'd be really helpful information for your speech pathologist to know.
Yeah, I was gonna text her later today, kind of based on how our discussion went, and then we actually see her tomorrow for our session, so I can show her how the communication device is working and maybe see if, based on texting her today, if she'll maybe be able to come up with some ideas for us to discuss tomorrow.
Okay, that sounds great. And we actually have our 6-month review coming up in just a few weeks.
Yeah, okay.
So that actually would be really good timing, that if you have the opportunity to let the speech pathologist know, and then maybe she's able to bring something out that you can trial, and then we can talk about it again in a few weeks when we meet, and you can let me know how that's going.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, so just to make sure I understand, I'm going to text the speech pathologist today. Tomorrow we're going to maybe talk about some options. And then when I see you guys for the 6-month review, either have tried a new device or maybe she can bring it there and see if that will work better for Liesel.
Yep, I think you have it. That's exactly what we'll do. And then from there we can just kind of see what's worked best, and then we can, take our next steps from that visit.
All right. Looks like Christina has redeemed herself in the chat. I love seeing what you guys had. And I think it was Naraya's comment in here. I really jumped out to me that says the parent is talking more than the mom this time. And that's a really important thing to notice, because we think about sharing information, helping her prepare to participate in the early intervention process, accessing resources, problem solving. She's giving the mother space to do a lot of that problem solving herself, right, through their conversation. You said the parent is more comfortable. Christina did a great job of repeating back what she heard to check for understanding, reiterating, acknowledging the parent's feelings. Everybody was more relaxed. She tapped into the parent's prior knowledge and her expertise with her daughter by tell me more about why you think this would be helpful, which is a real show of respect for that parent sharing what she knows. Did you notice at the end who did the joint planning, the review and the joint planning at the end? Who really explained what was going to happen and who was going to do what? Did you catch that? Yeah, the mom. I mean, how great is that? She did it. The parent did it. And that's what we want. We want to get to a place where the parent has kind of laid out the plan, is really comfortable with the plan, and can even repeat it back to us. That doesn't mean we necessarily have to put them on the spot every single time. So tell me what's going to happen. And Christina didn't even do this. It just kind of flowed this way. But the parent was comfortable enough that she seemed to me, even when you look at her body language, like she was getting her needs met, and she was empowered to be able to be a part of the process, as opposed to the first video where Christina was like, I'll take care of it, I'll do it. She was sort of trying to do it for her in kind of a dismissive way. So we see more of this, of what successful coaching looks like. And I think we can see that by reading the parent. The parent is relaxed. Her tone of voice is different. In the first one, she's almost in tears. So it's a real powerful difference. So I hope, it's kind of fun to see a good and a bad example, like the good coaching and non-coaching example. But what I encourage you guys to do is reflect on your own visits and your own interactions with parents. They're different with every family. But if we think about these almost like a continuum, like the first video is the solid what we don't want to do. The second video is what we really want to do. If we think about it almost like a balance, we want more and more of our visits to tilt towards that second video where we are asking those open-ended questions and facilitating that conversation with the parent because we ultimately want the parent to feel confident knowing what to do. I'll tell you one more quick little thing about those videos. When the service coordinator volunteered for this to shoot videos with me and she tapped into this parent, I didn't know till after these, the parent was actually a former actress. So when I'm watching it and the parent is starting to get into tears, I didn't know that. I'm thinking, oh my gosh, we're making the parent cry. Like, oh, what do I do about this? And she's like, no, I'm an actress. I know how to do that. So I was like, it all worked out really well, but hopefully that was fun. And, to get to see some food for thought. It's nice to have an illustration. So we've walked through these, we've walked through coaching practices, we've walked through strategies, and I hope it's given you guys some food for thought to think about what do your own coaching practices look like? You clearly have a great foundation in understanding what this should look like. So I hope this has given you a strategy or two to think about, to maybe another tool in your tool belt, or even, and maybe with tools, we can think about even that checklist. So I would love for you to type into the chat something you're going to think more about. What are you going to take away from this session today? And it could be solidly what not to do from Christina's first video, and that's okay. But type into the chat for me, what are you going to take away from today? What's your plan? Like maybe what are you going to try? What do you want to do a little more of? A little better, a little different? And while you're doing that, I'm going to go ahead and make sure one of your handout that's not the checklist, you have some hyperlinks there where you can learn more about using coaching as a service coordinator. We have some free resources available in Virginia. One of them is a kind of like a white paper, is just a PDF you can read, and the other one is a free online course that you can use, and it's like an hour or two. I should know. I wrote it. I can't remember. It's maybe about an hour, and you can get a certificate of completion. So I'm seeing lots of fantastic things popping into the chat, using open-ended questions, a little more pause time. Think about how I think about helping connect parents to resources. I love it. I really admire that you guys did that thinking today. Here's my information. If you need to reach out to me, if you need help getting these resources, you want to think any more about this, you've got my email. I'll be presenting after lunch too on some more service coordination stuff, so maybe I'll see you then. But thank you guys for the hour and for the entertainment, seeing your chat in your comments in the chat. I'm going to hand it back over to Nicole to wrap us up, but know that I'm available if you have questions. I mean, I can certainly hang out in the room if that's allowed, Nicole, or you can reach out to me by email.
Thank you so much.